Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer a fair number of simple questions. WTF is Shatter and the Humble Indie Bundle. It is back, ladies and gentlemen. This is a proper one, as opposed to the whole Humble Indie Bundle for Android thing, or the Humble Music Bundle and all this other stuff, you know. Which is fine, I don't mind the fact that those things exist, but let's be honest, what everyone is really excited for is the new Humble Indie Bundle. The big one. The one that's got the really good games in it, the one that's the legend when it comes to value, and having crazy amounts of good stuff for whatever price you happen to wish to pay. This time around, I can give you everything that's going to be in there. I can tell you exactly what it's going to be, and I believe if this video actually releases at the right time, it should be out right now. It should be available right now over at humblebundle.com. So what is to be expected from it? Well, first game to be expected from this particular bundle is, of course, Shatter. The other games, which I'll talk about in a few moments after I've talked fairly in depth about Shatter, because honestly, this is one of the only games of the entire bundle that I haven't actually done a video on prior to that. I, funnily enough, actually haven't done a video on the original Torchlight either, so we might talk a little bit about that as well, but Shatter is something I have not done a video on at all, and it is pretty damn awesome. But what else is in the bundle? So, we've got Roshard, or Rock Hard, whichever you prefer, which is a physics-based 2D platformer and action shooter. We've also got the wonderful Dust Force. Dust Force being a fantastic precision, score-based platformer, which is it's just incredible. It really, really is. It's so very good. What else have we got as I try not to die in this particular game? Well, we've got Torchlight, we have Vessel, and Space Pirates and Zombies. So, Vessel is a physics puzzle platformer, which I have done a video on quite recently, actually. This is, I believe, the most recent release that is actually in this bundle, so can be argued to also be the best value game of the bundle. And Space Pirates and Zombies, which I did a ton of content on, and that is a 2D space shooter with some management elements, fleet building and command elements, and it's kind of like, it's a space adventure, you know, it's essentially a space opera, but it's 2D, and it's pretty damn fantastic as far as I'm concerned. So, I'll talk about those in a little while. Let's talk about Shatter. So, Shatter came out on consoles a while ago, it actually came out on PC a while ago as well, but remains as one of the finest, as far as I'm concerned, one of the finest Arkanoid-style or Breakout-style games that you're gonna see. It's got a great soundtrack. It's probably the thing that you notice first when it comes to this game. Hey, look at how great this soundtrack is. And it is awesome. It also has the ability to control the ball, and I suppose a ball, but let's just call it the ball. It probably has some ridiculous thing, but you can actually both suck and blow the ball in particular directions, which allow you to bend it, which is really quite neat. No question about that. There are also plenty of power-ups. There goes the Unstoppable, for instance. There's a way to very, very easily smash the hell out of everything. You're also trying to suck in this energy here, which will give you high score. There we go. Have one of those. Yep. Maneuverability. This gives me some extra control. You'll see where the ball is actually going to land simply by looking at the little arrow. And I can manipulate that by pushing or shoving. Kind of like that. Very Peggle style thing, but a hell of a lot more control. And there we go, there's a more kind of traditional style of Arkanoid. This whole shooting upwards and a vertical gameplay. And Shatter is really well presented. It takes a very simple concept and it presents it really well with a great soundtrack, and it adds just a little bit of a twist to it. Oh god, I wasn't even paying attention to that. It's like, oh, so many fragments! Give them to me right now, and then don't pay attention to where the ball is. But yeah, the little suck and blow kind of gravity mechanic adds a nice little twist to an otherwise fairly tired formula. Not to mention exceptional presentation across the board. And the game looks great, it plays great, good control even on PC, regardless of the fact that it came out on consoles first. And, of course, really nice graphic style, quite clean. Never really need to worry about differentiating the ball from the rest of the level, because, of course, they just use completely different, vibrant colors. Of course, there is plenty of score attack aspect to it as well. There are some ways to play the game in a very skilled fashion. This is, of course, not one of them. Blow over in this direction. Get the last one, damn it. There you go. Okay, control. Excellent. Wonderful. I think the soundtrack's probably, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest deal with this game. It is an absolutely awesome game when it comes to its actual soundtrack, to the point where it actually has a fairly permanent fixture in my video game soundtrack collection of stuff that I actually listen to on a regular basis while I'm gaming or streaming. It is just that damn good. I also have a shield there, as you can see, which can be used to stop me from dying horribly. Not really needed on this level as of yet. Just control the ball over in that direction. Excellent. Yeah, it's good fun. It's the kind of game where I play a few levels. I wouldn't play it for hours. I think just because, you know, it's such a samey concept every single time, even if there is a little bit of flash and variety, that it's just like, it outstays its welcome. But I think it was never really designed for insane play sessions. Yes, power-ups are all good. Great advice there. Wonderful. Let's send them in that direction. Thank you. Break some stuff. Also, I love the way that some of the blocks interact with each other. It's not just a case of breaking certain blocks. There are blocks which interact differently depending on the level. They can actually be knocked around. They're not stationary necessarily. Always nice. I mean, if you're going to take a very tired formula, then you do have to at least put some effort into... Whoa! Okay, got knocked around by the blocks on the level here. Anyway, you got to put at least some effort into creating an interesting set of mechanics that differentiate you from the 1,000,001 other breakout clones there are on the market, and have been on the market for the last 20 to 30 years, I might add. You know, this is the whole ball and paddle thing is not exactly new. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I should have put my shield up there. Oh, well, never mind. Ah! There we go. Fantastic. Game does get a little bit crazy as you go further in, needless to say. But yeah, it's a really enjoyable game, and it's definitely worth playing. It's one of the standouts of the bundle, but let's be honest, it's a really, really great bundle. There's not a single bad game in it. So let's do a brief overview. Yes, multi-ball, of course. Let's do a brief overview of what it's all about. So, when it comes down to Rock Hard, or Roshard, it is a physics-based platform. It's also got some combat elements in it. You play the guy who's basically a maintenance worker on a station. Horrible things happen in the station, and the two really cool... Well, in fact, I'd say the entire game is kind of based around gravity, but you can manipulate gravity in the level that you're in, and you can also... I just want to point out that I'm trying to commentate while doing all this crazy stuff. You can also control things with a gravity lifter, you know, a gravity gun, essentially. Ah, god damn it. That did not go well at all, did it? No, no, it did not. Oh, come on. There we go. Bosses, or boss. Does the job. Yes, this actually does have combat in it as well. You can shoot stuff using your power bar, which is really kind of cool. There we go. Let's unleash the ball. Yeah, I enjoyed that game for the most part. I mean, it's a puzzle platformer, so there are elements of it that I don't like just because I don't like puzzle platformers. It's not a genre that I particularly appreciate. I kind of wish that I did, honestly, because, I mean, there's so many of the bloody things, for one thing. It would be nice to actually like that fairly prolific genre when it comes down to indie games in general. I actually asked a couple of indie devs, you know, why are there so many puzzle platformers? And the answer every time was Braid. It's like, we saw the success of Braid, and that's why so many of these games actually exist. Braid showed us the way, as it were, so we created these puzzle platformers with a hope to be as successful as Braid. And, you know, I can't really blame them for that. Not at all. But there are a rather large number of them. Roshard, Rockhard certainly being one of them. What else was there in the bundle? So, talked about Shatter, talked about Rockhard. Oh, God. How am I supposed to commentate with this BS on the screen? Seriously. This is a hell of a lot harder than you might think. Let's try and at least keep them in the mix. Oh, they're going to speed up. Wonderful. Great, great. Okay, so Dust Force. Dust Force, a precision platformer. Very much about getting the highest possible score. And you do that by cleaning up all the dust on the level and moving your way through the objectives and obstacles as quickly as possible. There are no real... Well, you know, I wouldn't say there are really enemies to fight, per se. That's not really what it's all about. It's all about cleaning up as quickly as you can. Great graphic style, really great soundtrack in that game. Certainly one of the best precision platformers I've played on PC. If you've played games like Meat Boy, or to some degree, VVV, I Want to Be the Guy, and of course, recently titled by the name of They Bleed Pixels, then I think you'll probably have a reasonable idea of what it's all about. But again, you know, there's no combat in it, so if you're looking for a combat experience, you're not going to get that, but there is a ton of content in that game regardless. Very, very well designed, and has a rather unique theme to it, to say the least. Alright. Let's move on and play a little bit more of this, and I'll round up the rest of it. So, next game on the list is Torchlight. You know, I think we're going to come back to that at the end, actually. I want to spend a little bit more time on Torchlight, especially since Torchlight 2 is coming out very, very soon indeed. So, let's talk about Vessel. Vessel is another physics-based puzzle platformer, and this time around it's based on fluid dynamics. It's based around the idea of liquid moving and interacting with objects in a very specific way, but this time around, liquid can actually become a real-life thing, which is very, very odd indeed. Liquid can animate itself into these creatures, and that's a little unusual. It's not something that I've really seen too much of before, and you have to control them. Well, not so much control them, but kind of try to get them to go in the right direction. They are it's a pretty unique game as far as I'm concerned. It's not one that I enjoyed all that much, but again, it's because that's a genre that I just don't like. I wouldn't say that it's a bad game, not at all. I mean, it's got a great art style. I love the way that Liquid is actually portrayed in that game, and the way that the engine allows you to do all sorts of crazy things with it. The physics engine for that is really quite neat. So, that's certainly worth taking a look at. Space Pirates and Zombies is a game that I've talked about a huge amount. I do narration in that game. I don't really know if that's a selling point or not. I'm going to go with probably not for the most part. But that game it's kind of space opera-esque. You know, it's got some limited elite-style things going on. I would say that it's also very much inspired by a game called Starscape, which was a really awesome 2D space game, which had a fairly similar concept where you had a mothership and you had to send ships out and gather resources and things like that. I'd say that this one is much more combat-orientated and far more refined than Starscape was. It's also got a really cool meta-campaign thing going on later on, whereby the universe is being infected by a zombie type, essentially the Borg kind of plague that's going on there, so that's particularly awesome. It's got a nice theme to it. It's got a lot of extra content involved in it as well. I mean, that game is just chock full of content, and they even added on a bunch of free stuff afterwards, so it's really hard to complain, especially bearing in mind there was 2 people that made that game. They did such a great job of making a really enjoyable space combat experience and listened to a lot of really good feedback from the player base to make the game even better. So yeah, Space Pirates and Zombies is a big one for me. I wouldn't be put off by the name, and I think that's maybe something that put a lot of people off. It's a pretty damn stupid name, let's be honest. The game could have been taken far more seriously as a really good space title if it hadn't been called that. I think people thought that it was very gimmicky, and it's not. You know, I would say it's unfair, but at the end of the day, they're the guys that actually chose the name, so it's really hard to say, oh, well, you know, it's unfair that it was received that way. Well, you're the guys that actually made that happen, so there you go. Alright, so I'm about done with Shatter. Let's actually have a look at Torchlight. I want to talk a little bit about the original Torchlight, since the second one is coming out very soon, and while it's got a lot of acclaim, it does have a few problems of its own, so let's head on over to Torchlight. Alright, Torchlight. God, it has been a while, and thanks to Steam Cloud Save, I still have my old character, so do I remember how to play it? Probably not, but hey, it's Torchlight. It shouldn't be too difficult to figure out one way or the other. So, what was wrong with Torchlight? I suppose that's probably the thing we should address first, because it was considered by many to be a very strong Diablo clone. And I said Diablo clone with the greatest of love, because let's be honest, the people that worked on this game were the people that also worked on both Diablo and Fate. These were guys that were involved in both of those games at a fairly core level. There's a reason the pet system is in Torchlight, for instance. Those of you who haven't seen this before, it's a Diablo clone, but you've got this pet that can do stuff as well, and you are doing what you were doing in Diablo, which is to smack the living crap out of things, which, you know, you can do very, very well, I have to say. The game is based around you hitting things and loot popping out. That was their stated goal, as it is with Torchlight 2 as well. And it does that fairly well, but I guess one of the biggest problems was, one, it was too easy. I mean, this is on hard difficulty, and it really is not particularly tricky at all to actually stay on top of what you're doing. No, not at all. It really isn't. It's not a difficult game. There aren't any particularly difficult bosses. The game just plays in such a way that you slaughter your way through everything, and that's fun for a while, but there are times when you want to be challenged, and quite frankly, you don't really get that all that much with this game. Second problem, I would say, is that the game very much doesn't have a lot going for it beyond the actual story. Once you've done with the story, it's like, get a bunch of items from the infinite dungeon, and that's about all the game really has to offer you at that point. And at which point you think, well, I wanted more, you know, I wanted something else, and it probably comes down to the fact that the game just doesn't have multiplayer. This game was made in about 9 months, and it was released without multiplayer. Said, you know what, we're just going to make a single-player experience, and hopefully that'll be enough for you. And for a while it is. You know, it's still a fun game. No one can really dispute that. I think they've got the combat engine and the fact that you're smashing things to pieces very, very well put together indeed. It's hard to argue with it. Stuff explodes, you know? I would say that animation quality is not great in Torchlight 1, especially not in comparison to its successor, but still, stuff still pretty much explodes. There's a lot of impact and weight behind all of the skills. It's very kinetic. It's not as fast as Torchlight 2, but, you know, it's pretty good. I think that maybe the game was a little bit overhyped when it came out by people that were just looking for a game that was like Diablo. And, you know, it is like Diablo. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Especially when this game came out, because really, we'd had a couple of years of no real Diablo-like games at all, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth for those that really enjoy that particular genre. It is not a well-liked thing. But now we have more. We have Diablo 3, we've got Grim Dawn on the way, we have Path of Exile already in beta, and we have a number of other titles which are coming along that really do reinvigorate this particular genre. So, standing right now, I'd say the original Torchlight is good for a while. You know, it's still fun. Hey, you get cool loot, and you can combine things, and there's all sorts of different things in the town, but there's really no play in the overworld whatsoever. It's all done via dungeons. The storyline is essentially non-existent. There are only 3 character classes to choose from, and not a huge amount of variety in the talents and skills. There was an awful lot of passives, more so than there are in Torchlight 2. It's still hard to say that it's a bad game, because it very clearly isn't. You know, it's still very, very well put together, but everything about Torchlight 2 is better, and things have moved on a little bit since the original Torchlight. It's just a case of me wanting to actually put some criticism in the direction of this game before talking about what's really, really cool about it, because I never really got the chance to actually do that, which is somewhat unfortunate. So, there we go. Go away. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Stuff that's really, really good about this game. Awesome, awesome, awesome loot. It really is. I mean, there's not a lot of visual variety in it. Way more in the sequel, of course. But the loot is really nicely put together. It is genuinely enjoyable to get new loot and find what kind of crazy statistics and procs are on the items. And that's what you want, and that's not what you get in Diablo 3. There's just not a lot of it at all, to the point where the game is blatantly learning from Torchlight 2, and they're making changes with the patches to actually make items more interesting. Torchlight 1 already did that. Stuff is already pretty damn interesting in this game. I don't want to lose 4 decks, really, for that. No, that's probably not the best idea. There's Mace, on the other hand. Let's see what's going on with that. Fanged Morning Star, in comparison to what I've already got. I believe I probably threw quite a few enchantments on a lot of these. Yeah, I think I did. Ooh. 11 Hellstone per hit. Hits harder. Yeah, it might be worth getting rid of that Mace for. Or I could just replace that one. It's a tricky one. Nah, it does 127 damage per second. It's pretty hard to argue with that. Alright, there we go. She'll swap those around. It's visually very interesting. Even though there's not a huge amount of variety in the areas that you fight in, mostly because, like, hey, it's a bunch of underground, so it's mines, temples, and a fort. That pretty much is what Torchlight actually has to offer. But it's visually interesting. It's very colorful. It's very vibrant and bright. Some people really, really don't like that. I think they're quite silly. But of course, it does come down to personal preference. Some people view it as childish. Well, not really. Stuff still explodes in a cloud of gore. There's nothing particularly childish about it. It definitely gets rid of a lot of the darker themes from Diablo. That's not what this game is all about. But one way or the other, it's still a nice-looking game, and it's still extremely violent, which is what we want from a game like this. Its overall design is an improvement on a lot of stuff that was done in the original Diablo. It's easy to call it like, oh, it's a Diablo 2 clone. It's actually more like a Diablo 1 clone, really. I think that's what they were really shooting for there. Why did I not identify that? Curious. It has been a very long time since I played this character, so... Oh, that is actually not that great. But it's probably better than what I've got. Yeah, whatever. It's like, it's a legendary. This is clearly designed with a caster in mind, but whatever, we'll wear it because it's, well, it's a legendary, or it's a unique, actually. There you go. I really need to get some stuff that does ice damage, clearly. Let's toss some stuff over to the pet to sell it. It's a solid, very, very solid game. It's a good Diablo clone, made by the people that should know what they're doing. And rightfully so. It just lacks what you would expect from a fully featured title, because it kind of isn't. You know? It really just isn't that fully featured, because it wasn't never really designed to be that way. Thankfully, the next one certainly is. I can't remember how to send my pet back to town. Where's the button for that? I can't remember. Damn it. Well, never mind. Almost sure there was a button there somewhere. Oh, it's in the corner. Yes, they changed that. Once he stops fleeing, thank you. Alright, go deal with it. Thank you. Game still does a lot of things right. It's just, the sequel is just better in every single possible respect. There's no question. But you'll enjoy it. You'll have a bit of fun with it. Anyway, that was a little look at Diablo, lol. Well, that was a spot the deliberate mistake, folks. But anyway, yeah, it was a look at Torchlight, since I've never actually had the chance to really talk about in great detail the original Torchlight. It's still a fun little game. It's just, it's got gaping holes, I think, where the longevity should be. It's not a difficult game at all. The modding scene never really took off in a way that it should, and that's really unfortunate, actually. I think that the modding scene should have gone way further than it did. Hopefully it does with Torchlight 2, but there are a couple of decent mods that you can look for, and just Googling Torchlight mods will bring you to a site where there are plenty. It's still good stuff one way or the other. It's good for a laugh. If this is the kind of game that you're looking for, it will certainly entertain you for a little while. The Humble Indie Bundle, ladies and gentlemen. It is out right now. Pay what you want. Once again, I should remind people that if you're not bloody reasonable, then these bundles are going to stop happening. So, fetch a fair price. Offer what you feel is relevant and reasonable for this pack. I don't think there's a bad game in the pack. There are just a selection of games that some people might not necessarily appreciate. The fact that there are 2 puzzle platformers in there, as well as a precision platformer. So it is a platform-heavy bundle, to say the least, but you do still have games like Torchlight, Space Pirates, and Zombies to diversify it. Which, as far as I'm concerned, makes it more than worthwhile. And at the end of the day, you pay what you want. So if you think that only a couple of games in the bundle are actually worthwhile, then you can pay a price that reflects that. One way or the other, definitely worth having. Go check it out over on humblebundle.com, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been Totalbiscuit, taking another look at Torchlight and the Humble Bundle. I'll see you next time.